On November 15, 1987, plumber David Chen was called to fix a leak in a Milwaukee duplex and discovered 400 hours of cassette recordings hidden behind the water heater. The tapes contained his own voice describing murders he didn't commit, in houses he'd never visited, recorded on dates when he had solid alibis. The final tape described what he would find in his own basement when he got home. If you enjoy my videos, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm. Thank you. Back to the story. I got the call around 10 a.m. that Saturday. Mrs. Kowalski, an elderly Polish woman who owned a duplex on the south side, said her downstairs tenant was complaining about water damage on his ceiling. Pretty standard job. I loaded up my van with the usual supplies and headed over. The November cold had settled into Milwaukee early that year. Grey snow was already piled along the curbs, that dirty kind that stays until April. Mrs. Kowalski met me at the front door wearing 3 sweaters and house slippers. She led me down to the basement, talking the whole way about how her husband had built this place in 1952 and never had a single problem until now. The basement was unfinished, just concrete walls and exposed pipes. The leak was easy to spot. Water was dripping from a corroded joint in the copper piping. Probably hadn't been replaced since the house was built. I told Mrs. Kowalski it would take maybe 2 hours, and she headed back upstairs to watch her shows. I had to move the water heater to access the damaged pipe. These old houses, everything's crammed together. When I pulled it away from the wall, I heard something fall. Behind where the heater had been sitting, there was a gap in the concrete blocks. Someone had removed 3 blocks and created a hiding space. Inside was a Samsonite briefcase, the old hardshell kind from the 70s. I should have left it alone. Should have put the water heater back and told Mrs. Kowalski she had some old luggage in her wall. But you find weird stuff in basements all the time. Usually it's nothing. Sometimes it's old coins or dirty magazines. Once I found $8,000 in coffee cans. That owner let me keep $500 for finding it. The briefcase wasn't locked. Inside were dozens of cassette tapes, each one labeled with a date going back to 1983. They were organized in a shoebox numbered 1 through 47. There was also a cassette player, one of those portable Panasonic ones with the silver buttons. I put in tape number 1. The date on it was March 15th, 1983. It was my voice. It was not someone who sounded like me. It was absolutely, definitely my voice. But in 1983, I was 19 years old, living in Seattle with my parents. I didn't move to Milwaukee until 1985. On the tape, my voice was describing a house. 1247 Riverside Drive. Blue colonial with white trim. The family has dinner at 6:30. The father, Thomas, always checks the locks at 9 p.m. The mother, Patricia, takes sleeping pills at 9:30. The children, 8 and 6, share the back bedroom. My voice continued describing the house's layout, the family's routine where they kept spare keys, which windows didn't lock properly. Then it described, in calm detail, how someone could enter the house and kill them all without anyone hearing. I sat there, on the concrete floor, cold seeping through my jeans, listening to myself describe a murder I'd never planned. I checked the Milwaukee Journal later. On March 22nd, 1983, a family was killed at 1247 Riverside Drive. Thomas and Patricia Brennan and their 2 kids. The killer was never caught. I played tape number 2. April 9th, 1983. My voice again describing another house, another family. The Washingtons on Oklahoma Avenue. I knew that case too. It had been in the papers. By tape 5, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely press the buttons. Every tape was the same. My voice describing murders that actually happened, recorded days before they occurred. But I had proof I wasn't even in Milwaukee for most of them. I had pay stubs from my job at a Seattle auto shop, photos from my 21st birthday party in Portland in 1985. I called in sick for the rest of my appointments that day and took the briefcase home. My wife, Linda, was visiting her sister in Chicago, so I had the house to myself. I sat at our kitchen table and listened to all 47 tapes. The murders spanned from 1983 to just last month, October 1987. Some I remembered from the news. Others I had to look up at the library the next day. Every single one was real. Every detail on the tapes matched the police reports. But tape 47 was different. The date on it was November 15th, 1987. That day. The day I found the tapes. My voice on the recording sounded tired, older. It definitely sounded like me nowadays, not like the younger voice on the earlier tapes, even though those were supposedly recorded years ago. "David," my voice said on the tape, "if you're listening to this, you've been in the Kowalski basement, probably around 11 a.m. Linda's in Chicago until Tuesday. You're going to want to check your own basement when you get home. Northeast corner, under the workbench. There's something you need to see." The tape continued. My voice described my own house, where I kept my spare key under the fake rock by the garage. How the bedroom door creaked if you opened it past halfway. Which stairs to skip to avoid making noise. Details only I would know. Then my voice described a body in my basement. A woman named Jennifer Marsh. How she'd been there for 3 days. How I'd need to dispose of it tonight, after dark, in the same spot I'd used before. The tape gave an address for a wooded area near Lake Michigan. I knew it was impossible. I'd been home all week. I'd been in my basement yesterday fixing the washing machine. I went straight to the northeast corner, under my workbench where I keep paint cans and old tools. There was fresh concrete, a patch about 6 by 3 feet. The concrete was darker than the rest of the floor, still slightly damp. I got a sledgehammer from my truck and started breaking it up. Linda would be furious about the mess, but I had to know. The concrete was only about 2 inches thick. Underneath was plastic sheeting. Under the plastic was a woman. She matched the description from the tape. Late 20s, brown hair, wearing a Northwestern University sweatshirt. Her driver's license was still in her pocket. Jennifer Marsh. I'd never seen her before. I called the police from my kitchen phone. I told them everything. They arrived within 20 minutes. They took the tapes, the body, took samples from under my fingernails, photographed every inch of my house. The detective, a guy named Morrison, questioned me for 16 hours straight. I told him about finding the tapes, about the murders they described, about finding Jennifer Marsh exactly where the tape said she'd be. He had me take a polygraph. I passed. They verified my alibi for the time of Jennifer's death. I'd been at a Brewers game with 6 guys from my bowling league. They kept me for 3 days while they investigated. They played all the tapes. Voice analysis confirmed it was my voice on every recording. But they also confirmed the tapes were old. The magnetic tape itself was manufactured in the early 80s and showed signs of age consistent with the labeled dates. Jennifer Marsh had been killed with a pipe wrench. They found it in my basement, wrapped in plastic with the body. It had my fingerprints on it. But I had 12 pipe wrenches, all identical, that I used for work. Someone could have taken one and returned it. I couldn't account for all of them. They never charged me. Morrison told me years later that they spent months investigating every murder on those tapes, looking for connections to me, patterns, anything. They found nothing. Half the murders happened when I had confirmed alibis. The other half I simply couldn't have done based on geography or work schedules. But they also couldn't explain the tapes, or the body in my basement, or my voice describing murders before they happened. The following account comes from Detective James Morrison, Milwaukee Police Department, retired. We never solved the basement tapes case. David Chen passed a polygraph and had solid alibis. We investigated him for 18 months. Found nothing. The voice analysis was the strangest part. It was definitely Chen's voice, but the aging patterns were all wrong. The early tapes showed vocal characteristics of a younger man, consistent with natural aging when compared to later recordings. But Chen would have been a teenager for those early dates, and the voice was clearly adult. We found no connection between Chen and any victim. No DNA evidence except at his own house. The tapes themselves were authentically aged. The FBI crime lab confirmed they weren't recent recordings made to look old. Chen moved away from Milwaukee in 1989. His wife divorced him a year after the investigation. He died in a car accident in Phoenix in 1995. In 2001, we got a call from the new owners of the Kowalski duplex. They were renovating and found another hiding spot in the basement. Inside were more tapes. Dozens of them, all dated after 1987, all describing murders that had already happened by 2001. The first tape was dated November 20th, 1987, 5 days after Chen found the original tapes. The voice was David Chen's, describing his own death in Phoenix. Every detail matched his accident report from 1995. We still have the tapes in evidence. Sometimes I listen to them, trying to understand. The last recording is dated October 15th, 2001. Chen's voice, unchanged, describing murders that happened in Milwaukee, while he was already dead for 6 years. There's one tape we've never been able to verify. It's dated December 3rd, 2025. Chen's voice describes a murder that, as of this writing, hasn't happened yet. We check that address every year. So far, the family living there is fine. So far.